Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric is one of the most boring games that I've ever played. Each level is little more than walking straight to the exit, with puzzles that boil down to switch to the character who can walk straight to the exit. The combat is single button mashing where you can't die, making the entire game a pointless exercise in tedium. It's got the dull, minimal effort gameplay that you'd find, and I have found, in any cheap licensed game. So what pushes this particular game out of all of them over the edge into worst game ever territory? Probably because the story is nigh non-existent and you're stuck with some of the most infuriating video game protagonists you'll ever see. Sonic has gone from being a cocky, though serious when he needs to be, zest of life free spirit, to being a flat brick with no personality and no definable character traits beyond insufferable arrogance. He frequently minimizes and disregards the help of his friends to brag of his own achievements, despite often being the least useful person on the team. Amy's equally lifeless and dull, and her entire one character trait is that she's the street-smart logical member of the group, which is often carried across by just making the rest of the cast into idiots. Tails is a bad one-note knockoff of Donatello, and his character consists entirely of reminding us that he's smart by constantly stating the obvious. Almost all of his lines are exposition for shit you already know. Doesn't really allow for much personality, know what I'm saying? For a while I liked Knuckles because his new characterization of being too dumb to eat is endearing and it leads to some genuinely funny lines, but as the game goes on, his dialogue gets worse and worse until I just hated him slightly less than the other characters. You can see the dynamic that they were going for. Amy is the Leonardo, Sonic is the Raphael, Tails is the Donatello, and Knuckles is the Michelangelo. The problem is that the dialogue is so bad that none of these characters have any personality to where any kind of a family dynamic exists between them. Everyone is so flat, dull, and poorly written, it's like the dev was given little two-word descriptions for each character and everyone was too scared to go past the two-word stereotype. This whole thing just baffles me. You started the franchise over so you could turn everybody into a cardboard cutout with the personality of white paint. You have a second chance to revive the series and you use it to turn every character into the most bland, uninteresting archetypes of archetypes I've ever seen. Just like the gameplay itself, everybody is so bland, watered down, and boring that it's impossible to care about any of them. It's totally possible to despise all of them, though, because despite not having a useful thing to say between them, they never shut the fuck up!
Boost pad! This is all me. Wow! What a rush! That is cool! Boost ring! I see a path I can take.
Look at this place.
Sheesh, this place looks really inviting. Following up, important safety tip. Land on the stone path, not the vines. Awesome, more killer vines.
Just gotta watch these vines.
I do mind plants that want to kill us.
How about we avoid the thorns and never grab too many rings? Danger above. This time it's your favorite, vines.
Looks like the road has obstacles.
Hey, there are things inside these things.
Bounce pad.
Boom! Sonic for the takedown. 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 Boom! Sonic for the takedown.
I would wager that 95% of the lines of dialogue in this game are just the characters restating the blatantly obvious. You enter a room, at least one character will tell you what you need to do to exit the room, or failing that, comment about features of the new room, or failing that, just comment on how you're in a new room. Every little tiny thing you do, the characters start talking. You can barely operate a bounce pad without someone shouting, "I love bounce pads!" Most of the time that you use the stomp, they yell out, "Nice stomp!" Every time you hit a switch, they go, "Switches do things!" They talk when you find puzzle elements. They talk when you find a boost ring. They talk incessantly while running, especially if you're playing as Sonic. They talk when lasers appear. They talk every time enemies spawn in. They yammer incessantly during combat. You do anything other than walk through an empty room, and at least one character will spout dialogue on something 2 feet in front of your face. It never stops! No wonder I like Knuckles the most. He's the only character who's allowed to draw breath without describing something that's in plain sight. This is why the characters are so deeply unlikable. They talk constantly but never have anything to say. They are such vacuous, annoying dipshits, and it just never ends. If you took a drink every time the characters restated something you already know, you'd be dead of alcohol poisoning by the 3rd level. You know what the biggest laugh I got in the entire game was? I'm just gonna roll the clip because you'll never believe me if I just told you something this stupid.
Look, ramps.
We can use these as ramps.
A ramp can be used as a ramp. Tails thinks that Sonic is so dumb, he needs to be told that a ramp can be used as a ramp. Brilliant! And that's only the funniest example. They spout stupid shit like that constantly. Second place for the biggest laugh I got in the game came from this level as I was navigating a bunch of platforms over water, and the AI did such a miserable job following me around that I kept hearing the other three characters drowning themselves in unison off screen. Rank 3 came in this level where I'm running away from a robot and Sonic shouts out that I needed to avoid the pipes right before smashing into every single pipe that he could find. It's a damn good thing the AI can't die because if the dialogue wasn't a big enough clue, they're all dumber than a sack of brain-damaged hammers. Okay, it's a cheap shot, but I have to take it. What the hell is up with the bandages? I get Knuckles needs to protect his hands, but he has bandages over his biceps where they wouldn't do anything, and Sonic has bandages over his feet, which I'm pretty sure would make his shoes slippery and much harder to run. I like most of the redesigns. I like that Amy is dressed reasonably for a change, and Knuckles having a bulkier body makes total sense while still fitting the aesthetics of the series, but why would you want a cartoon series where the characters always look beat to shit? It's just unpleasant. It's like making a Batman cartoon where he's always wearing the wrecked suit from the end of Arkham City. In case you were hoping the villains would pick up the slack and be interesting, we are not so lucky. Dr. Eggman gets usurped by Lyric as the main bad guy almost immediately, and we barely see him. He just shows up long enough to make his own submission for the Olympics of Stupid. He led Sonic to Lyric's tomb so he could ask Lyric how to better control his army of robots. Now, try to follow the flaw in logic here. He brings robots that were designed by Lyric to ask Lyric to give control of Lyric's robots to somebody who is not Lyric. How do you think this plays out? If you said Lyric just takes his robots back and leaves Eggman to rot, then congratulations, you are smarter than Eggman's riders. Shadow is now a one-dimensional cardboard cutout of the generic hero's rival from any anime series. He shows up in a random cutscene to fight Sonic for no reason, and his entire dialogue is, "You're weak and it's because of your friends," as if to announce what particular brand of boring one-dimensional stereotype he's playing. Once you fight Shadow, he disappears for the entire rest of the game, making me wonder why the hell he was in this game in the first place. It's like they were devoted to destroying everything beloved in the old series, so they just dredged up Shadow long enough to completely violate his character and then discard him. And Lyric completely sucks as the main villain. He sits out most of the game not doing anything to contribute to the story, and when he is on screen, he's just another boring stereotype. His backstory is that he got sick, turned himself into a cyborg to save his own life, and now wants to kill all life on the Earth for no explained reason. They never explain why he thinks all organic life needs to die other than because he has robot parts. The Cliff's Notes of his backstory are the only thing we ever learn about the guy, and he's in the game maybe 10 minutes combined until the last 2 levels. He never develops into anything more than generic Doomsday villain Category 9. In the third level, the characters stumble across a time machine that Sonic and Tails use to go back in time and get a map. While they're there, Sonic accidentally traps Lyric, resulting in him being imprisoned originally, leaving Lyric with a deep, seething hatred of Sonic that's a poor substitute for having any kind of a personality. Sonic and Tails then return to the present, and the fact that the heroes have a freaking fully functional time machine is never mentioned again. Yeah, the main characters find a working time machine, and not only do they use it exactly once and then forget about it, but despite the fact that this time machine is in Lyric's own base, he seems completely unaware the thing even exists. There are infinite things you could have done with a time machine to make the story not suck, and all they do with it is use it to find one map that could easily have just been hidden somewhere in the present day. So Sonic and the gang find this map and start tracking down crystals. There's a brief subplot where Lyric takes over Metal Sonic and sends him on a killing spree, but the entire game's plot is just find the crystal that opens the next level. It's just as vacuous and flat as the characters that you're stuck with. Through most of the game, there's no story, no character arcs, no interesting characters. The world is shallow and uninteresting. There's no villain to care about. There's just nothing to hold your interest through the dull slog that somebody was under the impression was gameplay. Even the developers didn't care about this. As the game goes on, you keep finding more and more mistakes from a severe lack of give a shit. There's pretty much zero meaningful cutscenes through the entire second half of the game, like they just got tired of trying. In most of the levels, the characters split up in the cutscene and there's only 2 characters to work with, and then one of the later levels just starts with Tails and Amy nowhere to be seen with no explanation. A side character named Quincy only appears twice in the entire game, and the first time that he shows up, Sonic asks him, "How do you keep showing up everywhere that we go?" See, Quincy's scenes were all cut, and they didn't bother changing any of the dialogue that they left in to match. Speaking of scenes that were cut, get a load of this.
Way to go, Percy! Way to go, Percy! Way to go, Percy!
At first I was really confused. I was thinking Percy must be Knuckles' real name in this universe, but no. Percy is a character who was completely cut out of the game, and they couldn't be asked to remove Amy's lines from talking to her in this level. Then in the third from the last level, I couldn't be bothered to keep count. You stumble across Lyric stealing something, never told what it is, but I just assumed it's this level's crystal. But then you fight Dr. Eggman, and the crystal just spontaneously falls out of his mech without a single word spoken as to how the hell it got there. It just materializes. They couldn't even be bothered to stick this on a rock somewhere for you to pick it up. And what the hell was Lyric grabbing if Eggman has the crystal? Makes no sense! Actually, I want to talk about the Eggman boss fight because despite how briefly he's on screen, Dr. Eggman is the only character in this entire game that I can stand. He's downright friendly with Sonic during their chase at the start of the game, and he never mentions a desire to take over the world. He says he wants to fight Lyric just so he can be top dog again. He comes off less as a maniacal dictator and more like a lonely guy who just wants people to look up to him but doesn't know how to do that. You never see him with minions of his own, which was either laziness in the production or the guy is so broke he can't afford his own goons, implied to be the latter when he mentions he buys refurbished missiles during his boss fight. The only invention of his that's ever worked is Metal Sonic. It's his one prized and most proud creation, like a son to him, and it gets stolen away from him, perverted, and wrecked when Lyric takes it over and sends it on a killing spree. Distraught, Eggman takes the last remaining weapon in his arsenal and tries to take out Lyric. He pours all of the resources he has left into this big epic suit of armor. Finally, he's built something right that will make the people look up to him and get him the admiration and approval he sought his entire life, and the thing almost immediately breaks down and is so defective it doesn't land a single hit on either Lyric or the main characters. Eggman is a tragic character here. He's not all that bad of a guy, but no matter what he does or how hard he tries, nothing ever comes out right for him. And now the last possession of his on Earth, his final creation, his last hope of having just one thing in his life go right, just immediately turns to shit around him as he's utterly humiliated once again and left with nothing. Congratulations, game! Your cast sucks so bad the only sympathetic Sonic character is Dr. Robotnik. Is it too late to switch protagonists because you completely abandoned Sonic's character arc? I've read on TV tropes that Sonic is supposed to have a character arc in this game of learning to work with teammates and not being such a loner. I had to be told this because Sonic only acts like a loner 2 or 3 brief moments in the entire game. Him ostensibly learning to work with teammates at the end of the game is treated like a big revelation when he's already been a team player for 98% of the game. So once Sonic and friends collect all the crystals, Lyric appears with a bunch of his robots and threatens to kill Sonic if they don't hand the crystals over. You know, I just thought of something. Lyric has absolutely no idea where any of the crystals are buried because Sonic has the only copy of the map that leads to them, so couldn't Sonic just destroy the map so nobody ever finds any of the crystals rather than gather them all and have them out in the open for Lyric to steal? So obviously the characters realize that Lyric won't let the person he's had a burning hatred of for 1,000 years go, even if they give him what he wants, and they decide to fight through the army they've already wrecked several dozen times over, and they don't even consider giving Lyric the one thing he needs to exterminate every living thing. How dumb are you? You just sacrificed every single life on the planet to save one arrogant jackass who's going to die anyway, you idiots! So of course Lyric takes the crystals and kills Sonic anyway as we return to the scene from the game's opening. Oh, you are so full of shit! That many huge rocks fall on you, you are dead! Your body is street pizza! They are cleaning your remains with a squeegee and a garden hose! So the big cliffhanger from the opening was Sonic being mildly inconvenienced for about 10 seconds. Gripping.
Sonic Lyric's army is overwhelming us.
She said as there are no enemies in sight.
Stand here.
So Lyric starts powering up robots that will destroy the planet. Sonic and friends somehow find Lyric's base, and you fight Lyric for the first time in the entire game. Wow, look at all these enemies and projectiles being thrown around. Good thing I'm indestructible, or else this might actually require any remote degree of exertion, skill, or effort on my part. But seeing as how I am indestructible, I guess I'll just button mash until the final boss is dead. Things look bad for our heroes when suddenly... Yeah! Eggman, don't stay down, bitch! That's how he rolls! Seriously, it's amazing how much better the story of this game plays if you consider Dr. Robotnik to be the real protagonist. So they use the inner beams to tie up Lyric and then just leave him there, not even bothering to show what happens to him after they beat him up. Did they imprison him again? Did they just leave him there? I don't know. The writers were too busy writing ways for Sonic to proclaim his love of bounce pads to write a full ending. They stopped giving a damn hours ago. And then we get the true happy ending of the game. Dr. Eggman gets his metal Sonic back. You know, it's the kind of cheer you up ending that almost makes it all worth it, you know? If only I didn't have to play through about 6 hours of bullshit to get here. Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric is a failure on every conceivable level. The gameplay is painfully boring and lacking in any substance or stimulation. It never even approaches being fun. The characters somehow manage to be completely flat and uninteresting and infuriating at the same time. The lone solitary good thing I can say about the game is it's a fun and different portrayal of Eggman, and he's clearly a complete accident because he's written as a disposable slapstick joke character, and he's not nearly enough to salvage the game because he barely ever shows up. As a standalone game, it's awful, but as a fan of the franchise, it's just a punch in the gut. It's infuriating to see beloved characters boiled down to one-note caricatures, assuming they're even recognizable as said characters in the first place, and seeing the gameplay completely abandon any slight resemblance to its predecessors would be bad enough if the most generic, watered-down, forgettable vanilla paste of gameplay hadn't been substituted in its place. It's a complete betrayal and outright mockery of the series. Yes, it's supposed to be a complete reboot and fresh and new start, but it's so beyond generic it has no chance of winning any fans to replace the ones it just shoved overboard. Yes, you could argue the game is aimed more for kids, but it's so lacking in substance I think even the youngest kids would be bored to tears by it. When I think of family-friendly series for kids, I think of Mario, Kirby, Lego, games that have enough substance that anybody can enjoy them and that don't talk down to their audience like they're morons. Every single second of Sonic Boom screams out one word: safe. It wasn't a single unique mechanic in the game, there wasn't a single character trait given to its characters, like Sega was so terrified of making yet another bad Sonic game that they directed Big Red Button Studios to make the safest, take no risks whatsoever watered down game imaginable. Better to make bland shit that's at least guaranteed to work right than to take a risk on anything that has a remote chance of being interesting. Well, congrats Sega, you've burned your signature franchise to the ground and have nothing to show for it but a second entry on Wikipedia's worst games ever list. How safe do you feel now?
Before you answer, just know that I don't give a f